Hi, it's Dwyer. It's November 16th, 2024. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Nothing I say in this video should be construed as investment advice. I'm just telling you what I'm considering, what I'm looking at, what I might be pursuing. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, these are interesting times. Understand, there are very few experts in the space. You watch some of these financial news networks, and they'll show you long-time Wall Street people, and you'll think that there's some clear-cut mathematical formula that will make you a successful value investor. That if you just know how to read a cash flow statement, read a balance sheet, that you can figure out what the great stocks are going to be, and you can make a living on it. Right, folks? I'm just telling you that that's a myth, in my opinion. Right? Don't get me wrong. Preparation certainly helps in investments, but there are no guarantees. Far from it. Right? You're in a space, again, where most hedge funds can't beat the market. It doesn't matter whether the person is a Nobel Prize winner or, whether the person went to Harvard, Stanford, UPenn, Wharton. None of that matters. Right? What matters is whether or not you can actually spot the growing parts of the economy. Let me make another point here too. Right? You can't look at the market and just reach the conclusion that the market is undervalued or overvalued. To me, it's hopelessly overvalued right now. The measure I rely on the most is the Buffett indicator. And then make a decision that you're not going to invest in any part of the market. Right, folks? It's a market of stocks. It's not a stock market. Right? The market can be overvalued in general. But at the same time, individual parts of the market can be very undervalued. Right? So you're in a dark room. You're looking for the light switch. It might take you 5 minutes to find that light switch. It might take you 2 decades to find the light switch. The fact that you went to Harvard doesn't give you any special insight into finding that light switch that someone who never went to Harvard, never went to college, might be able to find. Right? Knowledge isn't something that can be bought. I believe it's something you have to actually learn on your own. So let's compare notes. I'm not making this video as any kind of an expert. I'm not an investment professional. Right? I have a different, career. But I have invested in markets in a long time. I have been involved in leveraged ETFs. I have traded call options. I have sold put options. I have listened to so-called experts in the past. Understand my current opinion that the experts are few and far between is experience-based. Right? It's not speculation in my eyes. So let's talk about investment plays that have been tremendous for me personally in recent months. Right? Now, I'm a long-time Bitcoiner. I believe there are videos I made on Bitcoin from several years ago. Right? We'll just very conservatively say more than 5 years ago. Right? Where I was into Bitcoin, but understand Bitcoin has certain challenges. One of them is custody. right? I can tell you without blinking that I had some Bitcoin on two different exchanges. In fact, I shouldn't say Bitcoin, I should say cryptocurrency. On two different exchanges that just vanished on me, right? They were rug pulls, as they're known in the trade. This is back in the cowboy days of crypto, right? Also, I had a storage unit where someone went in and robbed the storage unit, if you can believe this. And the way they robbed it, I had, valuables on one side, and I had a cabinet. And whoever robbed my storage unit went for the cabinet, right? Tried to pry open and did pry open a steel cabinet. I believe they were looking for my Bitcoin numbers, right? My keys, so that they could rob my Bitcoin that way, right? So custody is a major concern. So I'm extremely attracted, and I have invested in, and it's been a cash cow for me, MicroStrategy, right? Michael Saylor has made numerous videos here online. I'm just going to point listeners to this video toward Michael Saylor videos. He is the head honcho at MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy realizes that Bitcoin is a special asset, so they have made their corporate mission one of accumulating Bitcoin. Right now, how that solves the custody piece is now I don't have to worry about having keys in a storage unit. Right? I don't have to worry about hiring a vault to keep my crypto keys. With regard to Bitcoin holdings, using MicroStrategy as an investment vehicle allows me to solve the custody space while also giving me access to my own brokerage account. In other words, if there comes a day when I feel that Bitcoin is overbought, I can simply trade MicroStrategy out of my brokerage account. So let me add an addendum to the phrase, not your keys, not your crypto. Right? Let me just add, that's if you can solve the storage issues. If you can't, if you're someone who from time to time forgets how to get into your ledger or treasure, right, you need to seriously consider other ways of having exposure to Bitcoin. The biggest cash cow in my portfolio at the moment is MSTX. Now that's a leveraged ETF. In other words, folks, what I'm talking about here is high risk. Please read the words behind me. This is not for newbies. It's a leveraged upside 2x ETF on MicroStrategy. We're in an era where you can now bet on single stock ETFs, right? I personally find them to be better than investing in options, because this is almost a McDonald's type situation where you just go in and buy it, and then you know that as long as you own that ETF, you're trying to be bullish on the underlying single stock, right? So they have single stock ETFs for a host of business entities. Do your research. I'm not going to recommend anything here. I'm just going to tell you that I've owned MSTX for the last few months, and as good as Bitcoin has been, this leveraged ETF has been much better, right? Let's make another point too. Understand, there's a cost involved. Believe it or not, the people running the leveraged ETF are trying to make money themselves. Welcome to a free market. So you're going to have to pay a fee to those people on an ongoing basis. But understand, you're already well north of Bitcoin's rate of return. well north of it. So that fee is really coming out of the increased profits you're making by using the leveraged ETF. Now let's talk safety. MicroStrategy is much safer, as you can imagine, than a leveraged ETF that is in the world of futures. Right? Because I consider Bitcoin to be a long-term play, I consider MicroStrategy, which has actual Bitcoin holdings, to be a long-term play. My leveraged ETF is just for the time being. That's a shorter-term play than a long-term play for me. I just believe that we're in November of 2024 and that this Bitcoin cycle isn't close to being completed. I believe Bitcoin is going to storm past $100,000 a coin. Well past it. So for now, while I can tell you MicroStrategy for me is a long-term play, holding Bitcoin for me is a long-term play. And understand, I also self-custody some Bitcoin. I'm not going to tell you where I keep my keys, obviously. But let me just point out that because Bitcoin looks to me to be bullish for at least the next 6 months, I'm going to keep some assets in MSTX. Right? If there comes a day where I'm forced to sell my MSTX, look up that symbol. I will have made enough capital gains for the entire experience to be completely worthwhile, right? For me to be taxed on the capital gains. So, here's the challenge. And I'm just going to point people in the right direction here, what I consider to be the right direction, what I'm looking at. But understand, there's no conclusion here. I need for the market to tell me. I'm not going to rush the shot. I need for the market to tell me what's next, and something will be next. Because historically, we have periods like we have right now of Bitcoin dominance, followed by altcoins closing the gap. Right? Bitcoin always leaps out in front. Then people start to realize that there are altcoins behind the Bitcoin that are cheaper than Bitcoin and that actually have more capability than Bitcoin. So right now, understand the altcoins are percolating. I can tell you that I'm a big believer in DeFi. Right? I think traditional finance is already a thing of the past. Right? I believe consumers are going to be flocking to DeFi, which, believe it or not, and it's hard to believe, is more transparent than traditional finance. I also think traditional finance has one of the biggest secrets in human history. It's their derivatives exposure. Right? So just understand, no one's talking about it, but these traditional finance outlets have a lot of debt exposure in the background. Right? They're much more vulnerable, in my opinion, to financial turbulence, believe it or not, than the smart contract-based DeFi network. Right? Now, the consumer is far behind what's actually happening. Part of that is by design. Understand, you've been disenfranchised. Right? The elites, in a world where hedge funds have a hard time beating the market, the elites have put in place a financial construct where there are accredited investors and there are unaccredited investors, the rest of us, who are not allowed to vote, to participate, to get some of the biggest investments that are out there on the market. So let me just make a point here. You understand that two of the investment areas that are out of the barn, in other words, they've already gained traction, are AI, where, of course, you have private companies like Anthropic, that groups like Amazon and Jeff Bezos are investing in. Right? Understand, AI is out of the barn. AI is going to always be with us. You shouldn't even consider AI to be something new now. It's proven. Right? I'm surprised by how much I use AI. Many of these backgrounds are AI created in my videos. Understand, when I don't have time to watch an entire YouTube video, I let AI summarize it. If I'm writing a report or notes to myself and I need information, I can go to AI and I can get that information and then some. It's much more advanced than the search that existed just 3 years ago. So just understand, AI is out of the barn, but the current paradigm has companies that are viable. Waiting until after they've been viable for years before giving access to the investment to everyday public investors. Folks, it's outrageous. As I said, you've been disintermediated. Right? Microsoft can get into OpenAI well before you can. So just understand, we're going to call these out the barn ideas. Altcoins. The ones that are going to close the gap on Bitcoin this cycle. That's out the barn. You just have to figure out which altcoins they are. Who's going to win as the backbone of DeFi? Is it going to be Ethereum? Is it going to be Solana? Is it going to be SWI? Folks, right now it's unclear. Now, if you're a gambler, if you're a speculator, we can engage in a game of semantics, right? Where people say, oh, I'm not a speculator, I'm an investor, right? As if somehow the risk is walled off. Well, if you're someone who takes risks and who has liquidity, and that's very important, isn't it? Right? You might make an educated decision. You might make a play where you say, I'm not fully sure which one takes over DeFi. Ethereum, Solana, I'm not exactly sure. So you might have a piece of each. Let me tell you the way I play it. I'll have a piece of what I view as the major contenders. So when I pull up my portfolio, right, and understand, on sites available to the public like Yahoo Finance, you can actually check cryptocurrency prices every day. Right? Bitcoin is BTC-USD. You can check it in dollars. Ethereum is ETH-USD. Solana is SOL-USD. Right? You can just pull them up and you can see which are percolating. Right? Having just a few dollars, and keep in mind, these are digital assets. I don't have to buy one Bitcoin. I can buy, because it's digital, 1/100th of a Bitcoin if the transaction costs make sense. And I can track the Bitcoin market in my portfolio. If it's percolating, then I can increase my exposure. Well, just understand what you want to do, what I believe investors want to do. I'm just giving you my views, one man's opinion. In America, we can still say that without blowback. Right? What I believe in is in figuring out the positions in the market that are going to be profitable, and then to grab the players who have a chance at fulfilling that position. So just understand, if you believe, and I do, that this Bitcoin dominance is not permanent, that altcoins are going to strike back as they have in the past, then you want to ask questions like, okay, if I believe in DeFi, which crypto is going to have a major role in DeFi? If I believe in the tokenization of real-world assets, which crypto is going to have the dominant position, or at least a meaningful position, in that space? Right now, let me offer a shameless plug here. I have a Substack page where I discuss crypto. I believe crypto's that important to the future in terms of profits for investors, speculators, gamblers, whatever word they use in your household. Right? It's Dwyer70905.substack.com. It's also dirt cheap, but it allows me to have some resources to plow back into the space, to do further research, right? To spend more time studying markets. If you're interested in crypto, I encourage you to look at my Substack page. Let's talk about other ideas that are out the bar. Right, folks? Private space travel. In the United States, we have at least a $35 trillion debt. Understand, that's not true. Because when you factor in the derivatives exposure that banks have, and when you realize that the ultimate payer is going to be you, the taxpayer, through some stimulus issued by the government we're paying for here, you understand the $35 trillion is fictional. We're even more insolvent than that. So, we know there's life out there. You understand, in the United States right now, we're having secret congressional hearings on UFOs. Right? They can't even disclose to the public all what they know. It's like the Kennedy assassination, because it would be too jarring. So Elon Musk, who is often associated with X, he's the owner of X, he's often associated with Tesla, right? He's a major shareholder in Tesla. Folks, there's so much more to Elon Musk than that, right? An argument can be made that the centerpiece of the Elon Musk empire is SpaceX, right? Understand, he has competition in private space travel from people like Jeff Bezos, right, folks? The water is that deep. Understand what SpaceX is doing. We're becoming more dependent on satellites. SpaceX, of course, is helping launch satellites. It's helping put satellites in orbit. Internet access is now an essential part of modern life. You have parts of the world that don't have the cable infrastructure to get internet access. Here's Elon Musk. He has a company called Starlink. Right? Folks, they're spreading internet access all over the globe. Understand, this is a valuable check on government, because there are times where some governments try to squash information. There are times of censorship. You might remember a few years ago, there was a COVID outbreak, right? According to some reports, COVID came out of a lab. Understand, Donald Trump was flying through his first presidency. What tackled him? COVID. Right? Just understand, that shut down the economy. Some decisions were made where People were not allowed to go to work. We're still dealing with the fallout, right? Some companies now are threatening long-time excellent employees with unemployment if they don't return to the office. Understand, the world changed, believe it or not, for the better for my profession. Before, I had to put on a shirt and tie, and I had to travel to a courthouse. I had to deal with opposing counsel in the lobby or in the elevator. Then I had to deal with the emotions that happen in a courthouse from a judge who had a huge docket and a lot of people waiting and a lot of attitude. Of course, there was always a group of litigants who were emotional with each other. Now, of course, there's an outfit called Zoom. We're all online. I'm wearing a shirt and a tie, but I can wear sweats off camera, right? While I'm at the court hearing. I don't need to have everything in a briefcase. Now I can just have things laid out around the computer. Because it's a virtual meeting, people are better prepared because they have to get their documents circulated before the meeting. Right? Let's just say practicing law has gotten a hell of a lot more convenient. I can work from home. Right? I no longer have to worry about whether I have parking money to deal with the court parking lot, and if I don't, whether I'm going to get a ticket for the 1.5 hours I'm in the courthouse. Right, folks? Understand, COVID was life-changing for many professions. Right? COVID was life-changing for many aspirations. Before, people wanted to take the subway to work downtown. Telling someone you work downtown was prestigious. Now suddenly COVID hit. Right? Don't view COVID as just the virus. View COVID as a life changer. Now, of course, working downtown is not as prestigious for some as working from home. Now suddenly, actually being a parent at home is possible. Now employers are thinking, wow, I really need a workhorse, someone who's going to work 50, 60 hours a week. Now they're realizing that people who are working from home can juggle home responsibilities with that workload. So now, of course, people are thinking, well, where is home? Do I need to live in the suburbs, or can I live in a cheaper other state? Well, just understand, SpaceX, you're shut out if you're a typical investor unless you know that a company that owns some SpaceX is privately held, but there is a publicly traded company that owns some SpaceX. The symbol is DXYZ. Again, DXYZ. The name of the outfit is Destiny Tech 100. Right? Don't wait until SpaceX becomes publicly traded. If you're prepared to pay a little bit of a premium right now, you can own some SpaceX. Then as the public gets exposure, I believe whatever you paid is going to turn out to be highly profitable. Right? The shame in the whole thing is that you have to jump through hoops as a regular investor to get access to SpaceX, because we still have this ridiculous public company, private company split paradigm. Right? Let me also say too, AI, and I've said this in different videos, right? AI has different parts. There's the semiconductor part. NVIDIA, for example, is very richly priced. What you should know is that NVIDIA actually is making a lot of money. This isn't a multiple story. This is a huge jump in earnings story. If you're looking at the semiconductor space, understand NVIDIA is not the only company in the space. Right? AMD is in the space. Well, just be aware that AI has certain parts. So let's talk about one that you've been prevented from investing in. Again, there's this, public-private split. If you're an accredited investor, great. If you're not an accredited investor, not so good. Understand, too, that the qualifications to become an accredited investor are a bit less than binary. So you can make a lot of money. But if you're self-employed and you're writing down a lot of what you make, right? Because, of course, there was some research and development that went into it. Because, of course, you have business expenses. You still have an office. Because even though you primarily work from home, right, you need to have that place where you get your mail. You need to have that place where if you have a client who wants to meet with you, they don't trust emailing you. The information to them is that confidential. They don't even want to talk on the phone with you because they don't want the risk of being recorded in even a private telephone conversation. They want to meet with you face to face at an office. Well, if you're an entrepreneur, you get to write down the office, right? If you're advertising online, you get to write down the ad campaign. You get to write down the computers you're using to get online. You get to write down your internet subscription. Well, understand, if you have a lot of write-downs, that's great for your taxes. That's great for your taxes. That's terrible if you're going to qualify to be an accredited investor. Right? Just food for thought. So what I want you to do here is to look up a company that Bill Gates, who's an accredited investor, is actually investing in. It's part of the AI world, right? Because understand, AI involves computing at digital data centers, which require an inordinate amount of energy, which of course also has environmental repercussions. So if you can be in a space where you're generating energy in a politically correct environmental manner, then you're going to be in a sweet spot. And understand, because you've been disintermediated, if you're not an accredited investor, understand the accredited investors are getting most of the money. Right? This company won't go public until it's in the 9th inning. Right? Then, of course, the rest of us will have an opportunity to jump in the water. So just research it and understand. Energy is a big part of artificial intelligence, right? AI is more than just a search result. It's actually an ecosystem, right? Even though we understand that we're dealing with one climate and that countries like China are engaged in a lot of coal mining, they have their energy needs. They might not be as environmentally as sensitive as we are in the Western world in some parts, right? Just understand you have energy production taking place right now in politically correct ways, environmental ways. The company is called TerraPower. Again, Bill Gates, big investor. It's TerraPower. Again, that's TerraPower. Understand, they have their own website, terrapower.com. Go to that website and look at what insiders are looking at. Just understand the energy piece of AI is going to be a bonanza. Also understand too that unlike crypto, when you're dealing in the world of energy, it can't be hacked. You're dealing with actual solid assets, right? Even if you feel we're headed to a deflationary world, which is a distinct possibility, and we'll talk about that a little bit here. Even if you feel we're headed for a deflationary world, because sooner or later, markets take over. Because the actual power of politicians to manipulate markets is limited, right? But just understand, energy will never go to zero, right? There will always be a demand for energy. Whereas, of course, the fear in crypto, in an era of supercomputers, is that someone is going to be able to find out how to ruin the credibility of the blockchain. Right? You don't have that fear investing in energy. Understand, computers are here. AI is here. Don't consider it new technology. The newness doesn't matter. It's here. It's durable. It's going to survive. It's going to require an energy source. Now, the challenge for us is to find what that energy source is going to be. You, the investor, has to figure out, what are the companies that are going to be able to provide energy for the AI industry. Because understand, AI has grown by such leaps and bounds that right now it's energy constrained. Understand too, there's a runway you have to travel through. I can't snap my fingers and suddenly have an SMR. Know that term, right? A modular nuclear reactor just show up in my neighborhood, right? You understand, right now we have a regulatory system that takes years for things like that to be built. Now that's going to change out of necessity, right? So there's a lot of money to be made providing energy for the AI sector. Bill Gates's play, at least one of them in the space, is TerraPower. You need to be aware of the private companies. You heard me mention Anthropic, OpenAI earlier in this talk. You need to know about TerraPower. You need to know about the limited, and they are limited, opportunities for regular investors to invest in privately held companies like SpaceX, right? The symbol is DXYZ for one way to get exposure to SpaceX, right? Everyday investors need to just understand what the growing parts of the economic landscape are, what hardcore accredited investors are doing, right? Understand, the owner of the Carolina Panthers, David Tepper, as well as Michael Burry, the guy from The Big Short, are investing in China right now, right? We're hearing about how China is such a disaster. You need to look at what the players are doing, right? Bill Gates is in TerraPower. You need to ask yourself, what's TerraPower? Why is Bill Gates involved? It's going to open up a whole new room in your building of knowledge in terms of possible investments going forward. Now let's talk about inflation. I know we've just had a ridiculous presidential race. I can deal with some fiction, but when the fiction hits ridiculous levels, then I just realize that too many of us are confused, right? Grocery stores operate on extremely thin margins, and they have a lot of competition. In other words, I go into your grocery store and you're trying to charge $15 for eggs. Well, I can leave your grocery store and I can go to another grocery store and buy eggs. Right? I mean, understand, it's not like the The branding of eggs materially changes the product. So grocery stores operate on thin margins, typically of 3% or less. So we just had a presidential race where a major party candidate was talking about how she was going to fight inflation by cracking down on price gouging by grocery stores. Right, folks? It's ridiculous. I know there's some out there who feel that Kamala Harris ran the perfect campaign. Some of these people are my friends, and that, it's only because of racism, a lack of sisterhood. White women voted for Donald Trump. Trump, at least, had the majority of the white female vote. People have all these constructs. Right, folks? The biggest construct is Kamala Harris's construct. Right? Understand what really causes inflation. You want a big cause of inflation? And we don't really want to fight inflation, right? I believe we should by letting markets clear, but we don't really want to fight inflation. You want to know a big cause of inflation? How about the housing market? Right before you crack down on a 3% slim profit margin that a grocery store might have, a grocery store without any real pricing power, why don't you look at how propped up the housing market has been by our government? Right? Understand, if you're a homeowner and you have problems paying your mortgage, you can go through the HAMP, H-A-M-P. Again, H-A-M-P. You can go through the HAMP program and get government assistance so you can stay in your house. What does that mean? Folks, it means the price of the house remains artificially inflated. It means the young kids who are 21, 22, 23, in other words, the age at which people bought homes in the 50s, right? They're still priced out of the market. Understand, the government's doing damage to the economy by propping up the housing market. I know it's counterintuitive, right? You want more affordable housing? We don't need more programs. We just need to let the housing market clear. So just understand, we do have a lot of deflation around the corner because wages have lost sight of robots, right? Understand, we've reached a point in robotics. Look up Elon Musk's Optimus robot line. We've reached a point in robotics where robots are far more cost effective than training and hiring a human worker in many fields, right? It's obvious in cab driving. We've already disintermediated cabbies with Lyft and Uber. Now we're going to take the next step. We're going to disintermediate the driver altogether, right? That's where you get autonomous vehicles. So free markets will lead to deflation. Just understand, the political construct is laughable, right? The cost of Kamala Harris's proposed price gouging government crackdown group would probably be inflationary. Just understand, you'd be paying even more in taxes for a group of people supposedly engaging in consumer protection by cracking down on companies with 3% profit margins. Right? That's the level of political discourse. That's what's passing as serious political discussion in a presidential race. When, of course, the price of your house, just think about the price of your house, is what? $700,000? If you're in California, it might be $1.2 million. At a multiple to the median income in your area that would have been thought of as unsustainable in the 1970s, at least twice what it was in the 1970s. Right? So understand, the real inflationists out there are those of us who want to protect the status quo. right? We don't want markets to clear because we don't want the value of what we hold to go down, right? We would rather paper it over with inflationary fiat currency, right? So understand, there will be a day. Just look at Harry Dent videos here online. I have one in my favorites folder on my YouTube page right now. My Dwyer 70905 YouTube account, right? There will be a day when Humpty Dumpty is going to fall off a wall and all the king's horses and all the king's men won't be able to put the housing market back together again. Right? There's a guy, Nick Gurley. He has Reventure Consulting. Wow, is he good? Right? He will go through an area. He will walk down the street. This is YouTube at its best. He will walk down the street of a neighborhood, and he will point out that historically, the houses in that neighborhood, when compared to the median incomes in that neighborhood, have never been more overpriced. Right? Just understand, we're headed into a recession. Folks, economic cycles happen. We're headed into a recession where people are going to be laid off. Outside of the recession, we're heading into an area where certain businesses, the labor requirements for them are going to drop considerably. Right? Writing code, thanks to AI, has been revolutionized to the point where machines can now write code. So coders, of course, are getting displaced. This is outside of the economic downturn. This is just technological progress, just like the people operating horse and buggies got disintermediated by automobiles. Right? And so we need to realize that sooner or later markets are going to clear. We need to realize that any politician, it could be President Trump, any politician who's putting on a dog and pony show of cracking down on grocery stores with 3% margins, either doesn't understand the problem that inflation poses or the causes of inflation. Let me also point out something else that's inflationary. Donald Trump's tariff plans. Folks, it's a losing idea. Ask yourself, who pays the tariff? I want a Chinese-made EV. I show up, and then I hear that they're going to slap a 100% tariff on it. Is China paying that, or am I paying that? Since I'm the one actually paying for the car. Right? Understand the fallout too. You have some American company that cannot compete with the Chinese in terms of being the low-cost provider in the space. But yet they're still employing people. Why? Because if the Chinese car is being hit with a 100% tariff, and I'm just using round numbers for illustrative purposes, right? Then just understand the American company doesn't have to be close in efficiency, in productivity, to compete against the Chinese, because the Chinese car is going for twice what it should. So the American company is going to employ people. They're going to produce a car that, quite frankly, the market wouldn't support without the tariff. You're going to have jobs, careers, resources tied up in a company that, quite frankly, long-term is not economically viable. Not only that, the worst part is you're going to have inflation, because the consumer will be paying far more for their car, just like they're paying far more for their house right now than they should be. Right? So just understand, inflation is going to be with us for some time, just psychologically. We're not in a position where people are ready for falling prices in their pet industries. It could be electric vehicles, it could be housing. Right? We're just not acclimated. People fight back when the prices of homes in their area are dropping in price. even though making homes more affordable actually makes the housing industry more sustainable, because it gives younger people the opportunity to actually buy homes. Let me point out too that housing's so overpriced right now that you actually have a split. Right? Folks, renters like me are thriving right now. Understand, we're the ones who are able to live in communities for far cheaper than the price of owning a house. You think I worry about property taxes? I should, right? Because part of my rent is actually dependent on the cost structure for the owner, right? But just understand, folks, the rental market has decoupled somewhat from the housing market, right? People who own the house are trying to just maintain the asset. They're hoping that the space gets reinflated, or maybe they're using the real estate as a hedge against inflation. That's how ridiculous the situation is. So the renter is in there getting by at marginal cost. Right? The renter is paying just enough to cover most of the expenses, perhaps not all of them. Right? Homes have carrying costs. Right? Just understand. Renters right now, it's a renter's market in many places. So if you're going to tackle inflation, and understand, I'm a child of the 1970s. I remember very inflationary times. You're going to have a come to Jesus moment. That's what we had in the early 1980s with Paul Volcker, right, who I believe was actually appointed by Jimmy Carter, of all people. Right? You're going to have a come to Jesus moment where inflation rates rise, where inflation is bled out of the economy. Right, folks? Based on the quality, I'll put that word in quotes, of the recent public dialogue during this presidential race, where the inflation conversation was limited to cracking down on price gouging by 3% margin grocery stores. I'm not sure if voters are ready for that. I'm not sure if the baby boom generation is actually ready to have the value of their house, which is a core asset, drop by 20%. Folks, understand, in the United States, we can't even have a legitimate conversation on the ongoing pension crisis. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Don't be hesitant to point out an area that you believe is going to be bullish. Thanks for stopping by.